right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our 10th episode of Downtown Now, uncovering diversity best practices. Please feel free to ask any questions and introduce yourself along the way, along with the company that you work for during the presentation using the chat features off to the side there. We'll try to answer any questions later on during our discussion. But now I'll turn it over to Michael Deemer, the Executive Vice President of Business Development for the Downtown Cleveland Alliance. Michael?
All right, thank you, Michael, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. For those of you who are new to Downtown Cleveland Alliance, I did want to share a little bit about who we are and what we do. We are the only nonprofit organization dedicated solely to making downtown Cleveland the region's most compelling place to live, work, play, and visit. We are a place-based development organization that represents property owners, residents, businesses of all sizes, as well as civic partners in downtown Cleveland. Over the last 15 years, we've concentrated on building a clean, safe, welcoming, and pedestrian-friendly place that attracts additional investment. A place where residents and office workers can walk to meet their daily needs, where local retailers and restaurateurs animate the streets, and where people are proud to build a life for themselves and their families. A place where Clevelanders can gather and unite, whether it's celebrating milestones, creating memories, or uniting as one community in response to injustice. We cannot do this work without the generous support of individuals, small businesses, corporate partners, and foundations. Downtown Cleveland needs your support now more than ever. And in response to an outpouring of support and request for ways to help, Downtown Cleveland Alliance has launched the Unite Cle Recovery Fund. Donations to this fund help support small downtown businesses, aid our Voices of Cle public mural program, expand our Seeds workforce readiness program, which provides jobs and job training for individuals who are homeless, and sustains our Downtown Cleveland Homeless Fund, which helps us connect individuals who are homeless and in need of shelter with shelter and needed services. We launched this Downtown Now webinar series just a few weeks ago, and I'd like to thank Cleveland Magazine and Community Leader, our media sponsors, for this project. Since 2018, the Downtown Now insert in Cleveland Magazine has served to highlight the progress of downtown Cleveland. We've used the webinar series to chronicle a rapidly changing environment, utilizing this platform to share updates from voices across our downtown community related to the COVID-19 pandemic and our community's renewed focus on systemic racism. It's that renewed focus that we are here to talk about today. We're clearly living in an historic moment. The COVID-19 pandemic has upended all of our normal routines, and the fight against racial inequity is forcing us to examine what we have long considered normal. As downtown employers begin to return to the office and resume their routines, it's more important now than ever that we take the opportunity to examine our workplaces and our hiring practices. Focusing on inclusion is both a smart business strategy and the right thing to do for our downtown. It's important for the businesses that fill the downtown office buildings and the people who work in them to reflect the diversity of our community. We're a long way from that goal, and we won't fix this disparity overnight, but real progress seems more achievable now than at any point in recent memory. Today, we're speaking with a panel of professionals to hear about what inclusion in the workplace means in today's world, what's being done, and what more we can do. So I would like to introduce and welcome our panel. We're joined by Alex Johnson Boone, the chairwoman and founder of Women of Color Foundation, Mel McGee, the founder and CEO of We Can Code It, and Ruppert McMahon, Chief Executive Officer for the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association. Alex, Mel, Becky, welcome.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Alex, I'd like to begin with you. And, we had a little bit of a chance to talk earlier about the Women of Color Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the foundation and how you used it to take that power we talked about of having a diverse personal network and institutionalizing it.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Michael, for having me today. And I want to say hello to all of our attendees who are watching. The Women of Color Foundation recently turned 18 years old. I started the foundation strictly on a whim. I was attending an event at Walden in Aurora, Ohio, and it was a rejuvenation retreat. But it was about, things that were more like cosmetic surgery and those kinds of things, Louis Vuitton fashion show. And I was friends with the owner, and I said to her, I would love to do something like this, but I'd like to do something like this that's for African American women, and that is more educational in nature, helping women think about their careers and managing work and family life. And so she said, I think it's a great idea, Alex. But I was really concerned because I felt like at the time, 18 years ago specifically, that women of color didn't really have a place where they could go and feel safe in sharing not only triumphs, but challenges that they had as, being women of color and specifically African American. So I reached out to the National City Bank Foundation, that currently is now PNC, and I talked to Joanne Clark, who at the time was the president of their foundation. And I said, Joanne, I need your help. I need some support. I want to put together this retreat for women of color where we can talk about family, life, stress, triumphs, education, what have you, and feel like we're in a safe place with like-minded women. And she said, well, Alex, I didn't know that African American women felt that way. I said, trust me, we do. And she says, well, okay, Alex, I know you, I trust you. And if you think that there's a need for African American women to come together like this, I'm going to support it. And National City Foundation wrote us a check for $10,000, and the rest is history. And it was just so amazing. And one of the things that people said that they enjoyed the most was the networking and being able to be with women who looked like them and who had dealt with some of the same challenges. But it also helped me develop my personal network. And I think that a personal network is something that's so important to our discussion today. And not just a business network, but a social network as well.
Becky, I'd like to turn to you and ask a fundamental question. The Bar Association over the last few years has really become very active in advancing diversity and inclusion in the profession. But I'd like to step back and ask you why. Why to the legal profession is it important to improve diversity and inclusion within the ranks?
Yeah, great question. Thanks. And thanks again for having me, Michael. So the CNBA's efforts around diversity and inclusion are not new. You may have noticed them in the more recent past because frankly, we've really stepped up our game in terms of how we're communicating with the outside world. We used to be very inwardly focused, and we've done a much better job, I think, of looking up and out. But our commitment goes way back. And that commitment stems from really two core pieces of commitment. One of which is that the legal profession has been and continues to be one of the least diverse professions on the planet. Maybe that's too broad, but I don't think so, certainly in this country. And for many of us, it has been and continues to be a priority to make that not the case for the next generation of lawyers. And the second reason why it's been a commitment to us is because by virtue of our role as lawyers, as members of the legal system, we advocate for something that's called the promotion of the rule of law. And that means that all laws apply equally and fairly to everyone, regardless of where you come from, regardless of your zip code or your socioeconomic status. And so to ensure that those who are representing clients reflect the clients themselves is absolutely essential. And so diversity really goes to our core. The Bar Association has 4 core values. First among those is conscious inclusion. And so it's critically important for us, Michael, that our lawyers, that the professionals that work in and around the legal industry be as diverse as the clients and the communities that we serve.
Well, as a member of the bar, I understand what you're saying about the lack of diversity in the profession. Mel, as I look at you and think about we can code it in the tech industry, if the legal profession is among the least diverse, the tech industry is up there as well.
Yeah.
And you've taken the really unique step of building a business model around attracting more women and people of color into tech fields. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what you do at We Can Code It and some of the ways in which you're improving diversity within the tech fields.
Absolutely. So we are a coding boot camp. We train people how to become software developers, one of the best jobs in the world, and very, very essential and needed, especially now. We have a special focus, like you mentioned. We focus on inclusion and diversity in technology. So our mission is actually social equity through technology. We aim, and our vision is to graduate 10,000 students over the next 10 years, 70% of whom are people of color or women. So people underrepresented in the tech industry, which is of paramount importance to us individually, our groups, our families, our community, and our nation in the world. Honestly, we need to be able to compete and attract people with different perspectives, different views, and have people who know how to code and bring different software into existence without bias, which is a huge deal right now.
Alex, I guess I'd like to circle back to you. We've all talked, and I think all of us here today embrace and value diversity and inclusion across the board in our respective fields. But we're having a national conversation, a local conversation, very focused on racial inequity and systemic racism. And you mentioned founding women of color 18 years ago. I wonder if you could share with us, your perspective on how much things may have changed or what seems different about this moment from the rest of your work. What possibilities does the national conversation seem to open up in your mind?
Okay, thank you, Michael, so much for that question. One of the most important things is that the concerns that I had 18 years ago about diversity and inclusion, even though back then we weren't calling it that, is that we have a national movement now. We all watched in horror the murder of George Floyd on television worldwide. And I think that the thing that made the difference was that now all Americans, particularly the larger mainstream community, my white brothers and sisters, saw it for themselves. And I think that a light bulb went on that said, oh my God, I didn't understand. And I think that them joining together with us was a major force. At the Women of Color Foundation, we've always felt that equity, diversity, and inclusion were values that we embraced from day one. But one of the things that I like to tell people all the time is that diversity is a conversation. The action comes out of inclusion, developing strategies to include people. We're using all these buzzwords now, and I know that lots of people of color are now getting hired to be chief diversity officers at a number of nonprofits and corporate organizations. But the most important thing is not hiring these people, but giving them access to the CEO who can make a difference, who can have the diversity conversation trickle down to the lower ranks of the organization, but can also support, acknowledge, and fund actionable items around inclusion. We can talk about diversity because that's a great buzzword, but at the end of the day, it's about inclusion. And for me personally, it's about my professional network and my social network. And I am just so excited about having conversations like this with larger audiences so people can understand that we're at a crossroads and we have an amazing opportunity. And I'm so excited that people are embracing this opportunity because it may not come again, because I think everybody understands Black lives matter, but we have to remember all lives matter. African Americans and other people of color have been subjected to all kinds of systemic racism, and people haven't understood how we feel about that. But I think now all the conversations we're having will get us to a place where we can take action to eradicate systemic racism.
Becky, I want to, talk about what Alex just zeroed in on, that inclusion is the action, and you described some of the work that the Bar Association's been doing over the last several years. I wonder if you could elaborate on some of the progress that you've seen and some of maybe the strategies or tactics that you've seen in the profession that have been particularly effective.
Yeah, sure. So our efforts, we really focus our efforts in the area of inclusion sort of in three different universes. One of which is what we're doing to help advance the current generation of professionals. Second is what we're doing with respect to the advancement of the next generation, grooming the next generation and growing the next generation. And then the third is what we're doing to improve the actual legal system itself. So with respect to progress that we've seen in the current generation, and I count myself, I'm 53, I've been practicing law for 25 plus years now. And I count myself as part of this crowd that has seen real progress in the 25 years that I've been practicing. And what's been working from that is a couple of things. One of which is intentionality, is people making the definitive, clear decision to do better, to bring in more people who don't look like the traditional white male over 50. And it has been intentional progress. The second thing that's really been working is creating new and different opportunities in leadership roles. And leadership used to be perceived to be just a single position. It was the guy at the top of the house. But leadership really comes up in lots of different opportunities. And that's one of the roles that the Bar Association has played. So whether it's getting involved in getting published, sometimes there were huge struggles for women and people of color to get accepted into publication. So getting published as a lawyer is important. The Bar Association has a monthly magazine that gets sent out to 10,000 plus people. Publication matters. Speaking at programs is a leadership role. Identifying yourself and building your brand as a subject matter expert is a tremendous opportunity. Running events and programs through our sections or committees or our boardroom are other opportunities for leadership, that we're creating real opportunities for women and people of color to be seen differently than in the past. And so those are some of the things that have worked for the current generation. In terms of the next generation, we run a series of pipeline programs that begin in high school and run through law school, where we are exposing kids who are coming out of the Cleveland and East Cleveland City schools to what it is to get inside the legal profession, not just as lawyers, but the legal profession as a whole. We do that through programs like the 3 R's, reading, rights, realities, and responsibilities. That's a high school-based program where we are inside every one of the CMSD high schools and the East Cleveland High School Shaw, where we're talking to 11th graders about college, about graduating from high school, about building resumes, and yes, about what it means to be a citizen in the United States. And so we have exposed kids as early as the high school years to understanding how impactful being a part of the legal system is. And from that, frankly, I'll speed to the end of the story, we're growing now our next generation of lawyers. 4 years ago, we graduated our first kid that we met as a middle schooler, who's now a practicing lawyer in Cleveland. 5 more of those have come behind him, who've come out of the Cleveland and East Cleveland schools, who never would have thought about careers in law, but for the fact that they met our pipeline programs. And then in terms of what we're doing in advancing diversity and, more importantly, inclusion and fairness inside our system of justice, a lot of our work in the last 4 years has been around the criminal justice system. And that's been about bringing real reform to things like bail and bond, which traditionally impact in a significantly disadvantaged way people of color, and in particular African-American men. We've also been spending a ton of time looking at things like criminal sentencing. We've been advocates. We issued a statement today and yesterday and are hosting a program on Monday about the need for a statewide criminal justice sentencing database. So there are lots of things, Michael, that we are doing to put our words into action and to create meaningful, sustainable change that is bringing genuine inclusion across our profession and our community.
Well, I think those are all terrific, tangible examples, and it's always wonderful to hear the success stories like the ones you shared about the first student that you interacted with at middle school becoming an attorney. Those are great stories to share. And Mel, I know you similarly at We Can Code It, are tackling the lack of diversity in the tech sphere in a very comprehensive and intentional way. I wondered if you could, talk a little bit about the progress that you've seen through your boot camp, some of the things that you're doing and perhaps that you've seen in the profession that are working and having an impact.
Sure. So just to give you an idea, in the past, and it's improving, but in the past, we were looking at potentially 15% of all software developers or people in tech even being women or people of color. I mean, that's a tiny amount, especially when other STEM fields have grown so rapidly and been so inclusive. So this has been a problem that I faced when I was in school. That's a long story, but I was pretty much the only woman in my classroom of computer science. It felt very exclusive. And it took me a while to get back into computer science because I loved it so much, because I felt so different and so much of an outsider. So We Can Code It, what we're doing is we're trying to change that in a big way. So instead of 15%, we're trying for 70. So We Can Code It, that is our whole goal. We want 70% of our students to be considered diverse and to feel included. Some of the things we do, it starts from the top up. 70% of our leadership team are women and or people of color, which I think it's one of the biggest things we could do as an organization to really gain different perspectives. And it's really helped us out. So we don't just talk the talk. Every single one of our programs has those ideas and perspectives at the forefront. Diversity and inclusion being an afterthought, it can't be. You need people inside the organization who are passionate about it. Not everybody's going to be, but you need people inside the organization who are. So what we're doing about it is we have lots of programs out there. We have a program right now in Cleveland, partially funded by the Neighborhood Transformation Initiative. We received a grant from them. We have scholarships for students who live in neighborhoods and targeted neighborhoods. We're talking Buckeye, Clark, and the like, to bring them in. We start them with something called a pre-boot camp, because a lot of folks just haven't had the opportunity to try out what it is to be a software engineer, nor have they had role models. So we provide the role models internally with our leadership team, with our instructors, and then we bring it out into the community. And we host these monthly. We have one coming up in July right now. So I hope people will take a look at our site, wecancodeit.org, and check that out, because it's free. It's a great opportunity to test it out. However, we're trying to bring people in a really light, nice touch way where, doesn't feel so exclusive. Your classmates are not just your standard typical computer programmer that you think about, right? So we try to do things like that. We work in the community. All of our career services support is involved and revolves around inclusion. And we help people get jobs after the boot camp, and our partners, the employers, are obviously looking for an inclusive, diverse workforce as well. Overall in the industry, I am starting to see strides, and coding boot camps that are really short programs, like 14, 16, 20 weeks and the like, are helping people who need, who have a lot of responsibilities in life. We have special programs that are coding boot camp, but a little bit longer and easier hours, because we know all of our audience isn't going to be able to drop everything, quit their job, and join a coding boot camp full time. So we try to address it like that. I think a lot of other coding boot camps around the country are also helping in this effort. I hope more strides are made in computer science. It's certainly needed, but that's what we're doing.
Well, we've talked a little bit now about some of the things that are being done, and there's clearly a lot of good work happening now. Alex, I want to circle back to you and ask, what advice you might give an employer who's, stepping back, looking at the current situation and all of their inclusion practices and wanting to do more, wanting to do better? What advice would you give to an employer who is who wants to do more and wants to do better in the area of inclusion?
Well, Michael, I think that one of the things I would say, how I would start that conversation would be with telling the person that they really need to understand the various facets of diversity. That diversity is not just race or gender. It's religion, it's age, it's socioeconomic background, it's sexual orientation. So there's so many facets of diversity. So I think that before people can take action that's going to change what's happening in their organization systemically, they really need to understand what diversity is really all about. And then they can move to the next level in terms of developing strategies to foster inclusion. But for me, what works in our organization, both my for-profit business and the nonprofit Women of Color Foundation, hope you guys can see my shameless plug here. We have a value system that demands and supports diversity, and we institute particular strategies to make sure that inclusion happens, because diversity without inclusion is ineffective. But social networks, CEOs have to know their organization, and they have to know their people. And they have to know them on not just a professional level, but a personal level. One of the things I do with people on my network, whether it's an executive assistant to someone I know or a CEO like Neil Restivo at the Odie Company, a $1 billion global company, it's all about getting to know you professionally, but socially. And my circle of friends, whether they're professional or whether they're personal, they represent the whole globe. Asian Americans, Native Americans, African Americans, white people, brown people, yellow people, and that's how you understand the world and why we're in the situation today. People need to really understand that we are all in this together. We may have come over on different ships, but we're all in the same boat today. And that we have to remember that we are the American people. And all this hateful speech and misunderstanding and false rhetoric around diversity has to be replaced with strategies for inclusion. So I think that the discussion begins with an understanding of the importance and the various components of the diversity conversation.
Well, I think it's a good segue back to you, Becky, because you described a very systematic approach that the Bar Association has to addressing inclusion. And I wonder, as you step back and look at all that the Bar Association has done and is doing, what do you think is next? Where do you see opportunities to do something different or to improve?
Yeah, so I should tell you up front, I'm a believer in continuous improvement times about 1,000. So the work is never done, it always continues. And we're chronically looking for new and different ways. I think that you'd have to be living under a rock to not be affected by what we've seen in the last 5 to 6 weeks. And even an organization like the Cleveland Metro Bar, which has been so committed and engaged around diversity and equity and inclusion across all segments. And I agree with Alex completely. There's big D and little d. It's diversity of all kinds in all ways. But the last 5 weeks have shown us that there is an urgency and an imperativeness to tackling once and freaking for all racial equity. And so we've redoubled our efforts to really think about what is our role in helping be a part of the solution. It takes all of us. It's not about us owning it. One of the things that drives me crazy sometimes about Cleveland is every organization wants to plant a flag in the ground for what is theirs. I would love it if racial equity and inclusion is really something that all of us collectively plant our flag in the ground and say we all own it and we're all responsible for moving it forward. So we've announced, we're working on a series of initiatives. We tagged it REAL, which is racial equity, and the law. Our real initiatives are centering around 4 different areas, 2 of which we've already talked about. One of which is taking a look at really the regulatory and legislative existence, both at the local, state, and federal level. Where is there systemic racism that we as lawyers and as a legal profession can help tear down? Let's keep moving down that, and if not, amp up our efforts, not individually, but collectively with our other bar associations across the state, and other major metro areas and the state bar. Another area of focus for us under our real efforts is taking a look at how we can promote and grow white allyship. That's an area that we've talked around the edges about. We've never leaned in quite so specifically and intentionally, but we are leaning in to how we can help grow and promote white allyship. It begins for us with, we've challenged our members to a 21-day racial equity habit building challenge. You can go to our website and find details about it, but it's 21 days of readings, videos, podcasts to take a look to better educate through self-journey and self-study. What does, as Alex said, what does this diversity thing mean? Because there's so many different facets. But we're also challenging people then to come together after they've done this personal journey to help us think about, as a community, how can we be better advocates? How can we be better white allies to support what's happening to our brothers and sisters out there? Another piece of what we're working on is that we are continuing our efforts around criminal justice reform. I touched on it, the bail and bond issues, the Justice Center. There's going to be a next generation Justice Center that's going to be built. Well, the building was a big piece, where it's going to be, what it's going to look like. That was the focus of early dialogue. What we're really excited about in terms of thinking as an imperative, what's the system? What are the processes in place inside that building that will ensure that everyone has a fair shot when they walk through those doors? And then the last piece that we're really focusing on next is we're bringing back something that we developed about 3 years ago. We did a first of its kind for our legal community, a benchmarking survey. We thought it was important for the first time to try to get data to tell us just what the state of diversity looks like inside Cleveland's legal community. And so in 2015-16, we did a comprehensive survey. We got lots of information. And from that, we figured out as a community with about 24 partner organizations, that the single most important thing that we could do to better create diversity and inclusion within the legal profession was to create a priority hiring plan. We couldn't get funding put together to make this plan happen. We've called it the Cleveland Legal Inclusion Plan, but we're bringing it back now, and we're going hard to try to bring it back together. And what it means is we're going to keep growing our homegrown talent. I talked about our pipeline programs and what we're doing to support those who are already here, but we know we've got to create a broader funnel that reaches outside of the borders of Cleveland, beyond Ohio, to say to people who are practicing in the legal community, have we got something here in Cleveland to offer? We want your legal talents. We want your diverse experiences. We want you to come join a community that wants diversity and embraces genuine inclusion, not only in the firms and the organizations that are hiring lawyers, but in the 5,000 plus member bar association that says, we've got a place for you, no matter who you are, no matter what your experience is. So we've got a lot going forward, Michael, in terms of what the days ahead will look like. And I'm sure a year from now, we'll have succeeded in many of these areas, and we'll have continued to morph to whatever's coming next.
Sure. No, I think that's really, really well put. And Mel, I'd ask you kind of in a similar vein, as you step back and look at the last 5 or 6 weeks in how the tech industry is responding, how your business is responding. How, as you step back, what do you see as different, and what do you see as the next, kind of the next frontier for We Can Code It in the tech industry on these issues?
Yeah, I think in the last several weeks, we have been, we've reached out to students, to grads, to prospective students as well, ensuring that they feel that they have a place to talk, that they have people to talk to. Our student success team and career support team has really done a wonderful job of acknowledging that, yes, systemic racism exists. we are an ally. You are here with us. You are part of our community. So we've done a lot of messaging around that to make sure our students feel safe, heard, secured. We have helped individual students as we've seen students coming through this process. We've seen individuals who need extra help, extra support during this time, who have lost jobs, who have, lost housing because of COVID, been involved with protesting and have gotten hurt and the like. And we have tried to tackle those both on an individual level, because I agree with Alexandria that you have to know your community. You have to know the individuals who are involved. So I think we've really done a great job with that. Overall, we've continued to, we have added to our scholarships. We have self-funded scholarships since the beginning of time. Since the beginning of We Can Code It, we've given out $200,000 out of our own pockets to our students to help them get through the program. And we've increased that to include folks affected by COVID in one way or another. That could be their jobs affected by COVID. They could, different aspects of that. People who have been affected by racism and protests and the like. So we try to include them in the scholarship and grants now also. So that's our work. We continue to, again, continuous improvement. I'm with Becky on this one. You're never done. What else can we do? What else can we do? And I'm always looking from, from my team, from the community, from our students and the like, to find out what else we can do. We're looking to provide more grants, more funding opportunities, more assistance with day-to-day life challenges that more people are finding themselves in right now. So that's what we're up to. I've seen the industry overall react pretty well to this. Unfortunately, it's become a little bit of a let's plant our flag here and get some PR. But right now, I'm glad people are at least looking at it, regardless of their motivation. So that's really good. I love to see more scholarships, more grants and the like, and people really looking at inclusion in technology. What's up in the horizon? More programs, more campuses, more entry-level training and the like, as well as more specific post graduation training and training for employers as well. So we're working on really joining our students and the inclusion and diversity we have within the classroom with our career workforce as well. So we're going to keep doing the work.
I appreciate that. And clearly there's a lot being done, a lot of good ideas for going forward. And we also have a lot of good questions rolling in from the audience. I want to press pause on our discussion and turn over to my colleague, Michael Collier, and ask if he could share some questions with us from the audience.
Sure. Thanks, Michael. This first question came from one of our Zoom attendees. To the panel, how would you advise professional communicators to educate and understand the impact of monolithic messaging, especially when they work in a majority white organization?
Great question.
That's a good one.
Great question. I think that people are starting now to understand that the market has changed, and let me just say that I believe in a few more years, the people of color will actually dominate the planet, that everybody will be some connection or some mix of some or one or more races. So I think that white organizations struggle because they are so used to dealing with the mainstream community. And in my other life, I operated a public relations and marketing firm called Gap Communications Group. And we have mainstream corporations contact us all the time with that kind of concern. And what we encourage them to do is to take another look at your target audience and see how it's changing. The old stoic targeting the white male messaging isn't going to work anymore, because we have people of color who are, and that population is growing by leaps and bounds. And so people, it's just like you drive a Volkswagen and then there's a series of problems with it. And then you decide to, well, you know, I understand that a Mercedes-Benz is better. So then people start buying Mercedes-Benz. But if you want to reach out to those people and be effective as a communicator, you need to understand what their values are and how to reach them.
So I'd love to just jump in real quickly and add to what Alex said. I think one of the ways that real change happens is when people summons their courage to speak up. And if you're inside an organization where you don't think the messaging is what the messaging should be, is you go beyond simply complaining about it, either just to your friends or to your coworkers, and instead you step up and you go to the people who are in positions of authority and or power and say, I don't like it because, and here's my proposal for how we would do it differently. That kind of leadership, even if you don't succeed in convincing the organization to move away from their monolithic messages, and I love that word, it shows two things. One is it shows you as somebody who is thinking about the best interests of the organization on how to come up with a better plan, even if they disagree with it. It gives you a chance to show that you're thinking about what's in the best interest. And it also shows you as somebody who is not just a complainer, but as somebody who is looking to contribute to the bottom line solution. Identify the problem and propose a solution.
Perfect. That's absolutely correct. I think that complaining might not get you very far. I think that if you help them identify a problem, then first thing they're going to say is, what would you do? And so as you think about it and try to develop allies and partnerships with other people in the organization that you might identify as like-minded, and then you have someone to support you as you bring the issue to the forefront.
One quick addition.
Please.
Everything they said it beautifully. I always like to bring facts to the table. Bring out the data, show the data about how inclusion and diversity increases markets. You can really open up your business. If you're looking to change somebody's business structures, they're probably looking at economics. So let's go ahead and hit the financials first. Show them there's data out there. Just look it up. You'll find it. Great research on how inclusion and diversity really opens up your profitability, your market share, et cetera, things like that. So thank you.
Nothing like a good old fashioned appeal to self-interest. Well put. Michael, other questions from the audience?
Sorry about that. So in what ways have you seen your organizations change through the creation of diversity efforts?
Mine's always been that, so I don't have much to say. It's been great for organization. Other ladies here?
Yeah, it's been great for the Women of Color Foundation. And one of the things that we have done in our own self-interest and to help us expand our own perspectives is that we collaborate with lots of other organizations, nonprofit organizations, the YWCA of Cleveland, the Cleveland chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists, any number of organizations, the Black Professionals Association Charitable Foundation, because we want to know what other people are doing and how we can stay focused and maybe improve our programs. We at the foundation, we also work with places or organizations like Key Bank, the sewer district. I mean, we're helping people identify staff people for their organizations. They often reach out to me personally asking me to make recommendations. They send our organization, because we have a massive database, and they send us their information about job fairs. Cleveland Clinic has been a great partner for us because between the Key Bank and Cleveland Clinic, we are sending out a lot of job postings and announcements, and our database allows us to segment who we send these job announcements to. And I think that collaboration with other organizations, and they don't have to be other minority organizations. They just need to be organizations that you feel are doing something great around diversity and, of course, inclusion, and that they would be willing to share ideas, because I think that groupthink is the most amazing thing in the world, and we don't have to operate in a silo. Partnerships and collaborations are critical.
So the CMBA is right there with you, Alex. Partnerships are essential, and we are fundamentally in need of diversity inside our organization, both in terms of what our membership looks like, as well as the partners that we work with. We have to represent, we have to bring to the table different views and different perspectives. Otherwise, we cannot be the voice of a profession. We cannot be to satisfy our mission, the go-to organization on issues of law and justice. There is no one view. There are many, many views. And from those many views, what we've seen in terms of success is we've seen innovation, we've seen engagement, and we've seen other organizations reach out to say, we like that you have so many different people at the table. You're the kind of organization we want to work with. So we're dead in the water at the CMBA as a professional association if we don't have true, genuine diversity, and more importantly, inclusion around our table.
Well, I think we're running close to the end of our time, but I'd really like to give each of you kind of one last opportunity to share some closing thoughts, and maybe begin with this closing question of we have lots of folks watching who are thinking about these issues, who care about these issues, who want to do more. And I'd, in your closing remarks, ask you to share any thoughts you have about what more folks who are watching and thinking about how they can better address inclusion in their workplace, and to put a finer point on it, since we're all focused on it and thinking about it, what they can do in their workplaces to better address racial inequity. And Becky, maybe I'll begin with you.
Yeah, sure. So the first thing I would do is say, go to our website. So if you go to clemetrobar.org, right on our homepage, you will see REAL, Racial Equity in the Law, and you can click on that and you can see what we're doing at the CMBA. One of the big misconceptions about the CMBA is that we're just for lawyers. We're a 5,000 plus member organization, but more than 1,000 of our members are not lawyers. We have paralegals, we have business professionals, we have judges, we have a myriad of folks beyond lawyers who belong to our law students. We got several hundred law students and college students. Anyone who has an interest in how our system of justice and the legal community works in Cleveland can belong to the CMBA. And we've got lots of ways for you to immediately get involved, whether it's the simple start with this 21-day racial equity habit building challenge, or if you want to amp up your engagement and get more involved in one of our delineated areas of priority, we got something for everybody. So all you have to do is click, find what you're interested in, and reach out.
Mel, over to you for some closing thoughts.
Sure. I think it's important for everybody to check themselves, assess their own privilege, ask themselves, what would be different in my life if I had a different situation, and really empathize a little bit more. I think that's the starting point. I think asking other people, not being afraid to ask people who are different than you what their thoughts are on something, ask for their perspectives and opinions, and listen, and not be afraid of their asking the tough questions about race, about gender and the like, and really having open conversations. And finally, from a software development perspective, at least, really being open and understanding what kind of prejudices you might have when you think of what is a software developer? What do you see in your mind? Is that the right picture? And how can you change that? What attributes are you putting on other people that might be not directly racist or sexist, but really adding to the bad stereotypes and hurting individuals, community, society, nation, etc.
No, appreciate that closing thought, Mel. And Alex, I'll turn to you to have the final word.
Well, thank you, Michael. Well, first of all, I don't know if you saved me because I'm the best or the oldest to last, okay? But either way, I'm happy to be last. I think that Mel made a great point around we have got to just, like she said, check ourselves. I would say it, we have to stop the hateful speech. And we have to think about, I remember some billboards that were around town when this wealthy entrepreneur was posting billboards, and it said that it was God speaking. And he said, you know, that love thy neighbor thing, I was serious. And I think that we have to understand that we're all in this together. And I think it's important for us to understand collaboration, and that we should not be afraid to have the discussion, because you'll learn more about yourself and your colleagues or family members or friends or whatever. To me, it's about the conversation. And I applaud the Downtown Cleveland Alliance for doing a webinar like this, because this kind of thing is what we need to be doing so people can see and hear from people from all walks of life, all industries, all colors, all age groups, etc., and really start to better understand the narrative and dialogue around diversity and inclusion, and they'll learn something. And then once they learn, that they can teach someone else.
Well, I can't think of a better way to end it. Alex, Becky, Mel, I really want to thank you for sharing your time with us this afternoon and sharing your insights and wisdom. We really, really appreciate it. I want to thank our audience for joining us today as well and making us part of your afternoon. And at Downtown Cleveland Alliance, we're grateful for the partnership and the opportunity to work with all of you on these very important issues at this very important time. We want downtown Cleveland to be a place for everyone in Cleveland, a place that unites all of us. We know there's a lot of work to do, and we're just very proud and grateful to have partners like you to do it with. So thank you, and we look forward to continuing to work with all of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We hope to see all of our viewers and all of you next week for our next webinar at 3 o'clock on Thursday afternoon. I hope you'll join us once again for Downtown Now. Until then, everybody.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.